There we go. So just retweet.
Yep.
All right.
Unafraid Show. It's your boy, George Reister, in the building. Thank you guys for joining me today. I appreciate your time, appreciate your energy, and thank you so much for joining us. And always visit unafraidshow.com. All type of great articles up about the Pac-12, college football in general, and some things out, great things out in life. Today we have a special guest. We have Jon Wilner. You can find him on Twitter at Wilner Hotline, or you can find him at the San Jose Mercury News. This man has written about the Pac-12 for over 25 years. He's an AP voter, Heisman voter. This man has got stats and credentials, and we got the tough questions for him today because I am a AP poll basher at times. So we have to ask him the questions. Thanks for joining us today, Mr. Wilner.
Thank you very much for having me, George. I appreciate it. Fire away.
All right. Well, we're going to start where we always start on the Unafraid Show, which is dropping a dime. The way people can get to know you. You answer these questions honestly, and the way people can get to know you. And this is like how we like to start. So
Sure thing.
question number one. What one piece of advice would you give yourself at 18 years old?
Oh, gosh, that's a great one. See the world.
Okay. You mean traveling and all
Travel.
that? Okay.
Travel the world.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that because I didn't travel a lot as a kid. And then as an adult, I was hesitant to travel, but now I love it. It's
Yep.
one of the best things that me and my family get a chance to do. What is one thing that excites you today?
My family.
Yeah. And number three, where do you want to be in 10 years?
Oh, boy. Upright. You know, I love doing what I'm doing. If I could be doing this for another 10 years, that would be great. I love living in the Bay Area. I love my job. This would be fantastic.
Okay. Number four on dropping a dime, who is your favorite hero of all time?
Oof. My parents, I would have to go with my parents. I mean, especially if we're talking, a real life and not someone you just kind of read about or look at. If we're talking about throughout history, maybe Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
But for practical purposes, my parents.
See, that's a blessing because a lot of people don't necessarily have the quality of parents to be able to call them heroes, or they only have one or whatever. So that's a major league blessing, and I'm happy I'm in that same category. Who is your favorite villain of all time?
Oof. And again, real world villain or we're talking about the Joker, or are we talking about Joseph Stalin?
All right, both of those are acceptable answers.
Okay, all right.
Number six on dropping a dime with Jon Wilner at Wilner Hotline. If you woke up tomorrow and found out that you lost it all, number one, who would you blame? And number two, what's the first thing you would do to get it all back?
Talking about lost it all personally or financially?
However you want to interpret the question.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I guess I would probably blame myself. I mean, you got to take if I did something wrong to that level, I would probably have to blame myself and try to pick up the pieces and start over.
Yeah. Well, this question I think tells a lot about people because most people who've been on here have said, that it would be my own doing. I would have had to cause my own catastrophe, and that says a lot about you personally, that you have been able to build such a reputable career that you're like, hold up, the only way to destroy what I got is if I do it.
Pretty much, yeah. I guess so. Pretty much. I mean, who knows if a 10.0 earthquake hit in 10 minutes? That's that's a little beyond your control. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say certainly professionally, personally, it would have to be. I would have to contribute to my own demise.
Yeah. What What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of losing my wife and kids.
Oh man, yeah. Oh man, dude, that would be devastating. Like I have a wife, 4 kids, and one on the way, and I might die if they die. Like I might
Yep.
just give up on life.
Yeah, I got to tell you though, I would also be afraid of 4 kids. I don't know how you manage that.
Man, it is a busy, hectic schedule, but and we got one on the way.
Phew.
Um,
How old's your oldest?
18. She just went to LMU.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Whew.
Yep. What? Oh, ironically, because you used to cover UCLA football, my daughter is actually my stepdaughter, and she is Eric Turner's daughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he passed away in 2000.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It was the same year that she was born, so it was yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Number 8. Now that you are fully adopted and indoctrinated into the internet culture and Twitter culture, what will finally break the internet?
Oh boy. Um, my slice of internet would be broken if the SEC put 4 teams in the playoff. How's
Oh
that?
my God, that would that is a fact. Hey, they would put them in if possible.
In my world, that would break the internet.
Oh,
The
yeah.
internet's having trouble enough with 2 SEC teams.
Oh my God, you are 100% right about that. Number 9 on dropping a dime with Jon Wilner. If you couldn't be you, who would you be?
Boy, that's a great question. If I couldn't be me, I can't even begin to answer that one. I've never thought about that. I got nothing for you on that one, George. I'm
right.
sorry. Just stumped me.
Number 10. What guilty pleasure TV show do you watch that you were embarrassed about?
Embarrassed about. Man, I don't during football season. I don't watch any shows except for football. I probably watch stuff with my kids. I don't know if that counts, but I do not watch much TV. I got to tell you, I watch football, and that's about it.
See, that's because it just matters more to you.
It matters more.
You guys, we're on with Jon Wilner. He's been covering college sports for decades, and he's an AP Top 25 voter for basketball and football, Heisman Trophy voter, and he was named Beat Writer of the Year in 2013 by the Football Writers Association of America for his coverage of the Pac-12. Now we're going to get in your wheelhouse, Mr. Wilner. So the Pac-12, like it's pretty clear to me that the Pac-12 is losing ground to other conferences, whether it's financially, whether it's in terms of status, prestige, particularly in football. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't think it's an easy answer, but certainly the resources are lacking compared to some of the other conferences. I think that you look on the field. You tell me. You look at Alabama's offensive line or Ohio State's defensive line, and then you look at the same units in the Pac-12. Physically, there's a difference, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
So I think that a big part of the problem, and we see it when USC played Ohio State last year, and that's USC. They couldn't match up with the Buckeyes. Washington had trouble with Penn State, and last year had trouble with Bama the year before. I think that to a certain extent, there's just a physical mismatch. Now, why that is more the case now than it was, say, 10 or 20 years ago, I'm not quite sure, but I think that that's part of it. I think that the money, I think that exposure, lack of exposure is certainly not helping matters. I think that the Pac-12 schedules itself out to some regards. They build their schedule differently than other conferences, and they put teams in competitive disadvantages a lot of times. And I think that is hurting Now that we're in a situation where you lose twice and you're out of the playoff race, you can't put a team in a competitive disadvantage. Like we saw that with Washington and Oregon this year. I mean,
Yep.
the Huskies played at UCLA, and then the next week they played at Oregon.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Oregon was coming off a bye.
Yep.
So they're sitting at home fresh
in a big rivalry game, the biggest rivalry game.
Yep, and they're fresh for 2 weeks, and the Huskies are on back-to-back road trips. That kind of thing, they've got to fix that. I mean, you don't see the SEC putting teams at disadvantages.
Correct.
So, it's a complicated situation. Football, as you know, so many things have to go right for football to be successful.
Yeah.
Oregon is a great example, right? That program has really taken off once everybody on campus, all the donors, the faculty, the administration, everybody's on the same page for Oregon football. And that enabled the Ducks to thrive. Under Bellotti, under Chip Kelly, it's so many pieces to it. And if you don't have them all working together, I think it suffers. In the other conferences, the powerhouse teams in the other conferences, they've got everything working together, and the Pac-12 doesn't quite have that.
And I don't understand why the Pac-12 consistently puts itself at a disadvantage in terms of scheduling. Like the SEC plays 8 conference games with 14 teams, and it consistently just I put together like a whole stat and spreadsheet about it. And if you play 8 conference games, that averages 4 losses per each team. Like that, they obviously they have to be spread out amongst the conferences. And in the Big 10, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, that's 4.5 losses that get spread out because they play 9 conference games. And that just totally just devastates them when it comes to the total number of losses. Like that's why a team like Florida, I think, gets elevated because they don't have very many losses. But everybody at Florida would say they are not a top 10 football team.
That is a huge debate. It's a debate, especially in the Pac-12. 9 conference games versus 8 conference games. And the issue is, to this point, and we're in year 5 of the playoff, the committee that picks the playoff teams hasn't shown any indication that only playing 8 conference games is going to hurt you in the process. In fact, it's helping because the ACC and the SEC have done very well. So I'm not sure. It's going to come to a head at some point here where the Big 10, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 are going to say, what gives? We represent basically 3/5 of the board of directors of the playoffs.
Yep.
We're playing 9, and we're not being as successful in the selection process as the schools that are playing, as the conferences playing 8. You got to rebalance somehow.
Yeah.
Now, I would say this year, the SEC played lights out in September in non-conference games, and that is a big reason why they're in the position they are right now. To a certain extent, results matter. They beat Washington. Auburn, which finished 5th in the SEC West, beat Washington, which won the Pac-12 North.
Yeah.
Missouri beat Purdue, which thumped Ohio State.
Yep.
So LSU beat Miami. They did a great job in the non-conference. That's helping them. But on the bigger picture, that 8 versus 9 is an issue.
100%. And I always wonder, because I wrote an article about it, about how the rankings are a lot of times artificially inflated for the SEC because of the 8 conference games. Because while other teams start to play their conference games and somebody has to lose, and you have like an 18 versus 16 matchup, you may have the SEC who there were no SEC teams that played 10 Power 5 teams. And every other conference had multiple teams, or the entire conference play at least 10 Power 5 games. So you're going to end up with more losses, which I think that because if I was the SEC, I would not change. But if I'm the other conferences, I have to figure out a way to either get the SEC to change or go about changing it myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and then you get teams like, I mean, look at USC, right? They got 9 conference games and Texas and Notre Dame.
Yep.
So, I mean, that is a lot different than, say, the schedule that Florida is playing.
Or Alabama or Georgia.
Or Alabama or Georgia. The problem is that the SEC can afford to do it. Florida can afford to play Charleston Southern because they're going to put 80 or 90,000 people in the stadium. Alabama can play Little Sisters of the Poor, and they're going to put 100,000 people in the stadium.
Yeah.
If Washington or SC schedules Idaho State, they're not going to sell as many tickets. And so at a certain level, it's a financial problem for the Pac-12 to go from 8 conference games, or from 9 to 8, because they're losing the ticket sales that come with, playing a real team.
Yeah. No, I would 100% agree with that. And so that's why I'm going to transition over to Larry Scott, who is the commissioner of the Pac-12. I mean, and John Canzano is just absolutely destroying him and what's going on in the Pac-12 in his 4-part series about what's going on in the Pac-12, how much ground the Pac-12 is losing. And I have been saying from the last few weeks that Larry Scott, when he first got in, he was a great commissioner. But I think that at this point in time, it is time for someone else to lead the Pac-12 and usher in some new revenue, some new revenue, get a TV deal, and all of that.
Well, I mean, the people who decide whether Larry Scott's the commissioner are the 10 presidents or 12 presidents and chancellors. They are his bosses. And a year and a half ago, they gave him a contract extension through 2022.
Yes.
So he's got this year plus another 4. So until they decide a change needs to be made, it doesn't matter how upset the fans are. It doesn't matter what the situation is on the field, on the court. He's going to be the commissioner. They've got to make the decision. Has he done? Is the problem? And remember, though, the commissioners and presidents, they are dealing with multi-billion-dollar universities.
Yep.
They've got problems with the dean of the English department. They got all kinds of issues to deal with. So in order to make a change in commissioner, it's got to be a dumpster fire that reaches all the way up to the corner office and the top, in the penthouse, basically.
So do you think that it's reached that level yet?
I do not think it's reached that level for the presidents and chancellors. Fans are upset. The ADs, the athletic directors, I don't think are happy. Donors are not happy. But I'm not sure that the presidents and chancellors have reached a point where they're going to say, you know what, we got to make a change.
I don't understand why, because like when you look at the right now, okay, the Pac-12 doesn't look in bad shape right now, but when you look at the fact that the Big Ten just negotiated a deal that's going to pay their each school $50 million per year. The SEC is well over $40 million a year. The Pac-12 is going to be in dead last at about $31 million a year per school. And people wonder why the Pac-12 has trouble attracting the best coaches.
Well, that's true. I mean, part of that is that the Pac-12 presidents don't want to get into a bidding war with an Alabama or a Georgia or an Ohio State because they think that at a certain level is unseemly and beneath them. There's definitely it's not just a matter of can they write the check. It's a matter of do they even want to write the check. Really, they don't want to. They almost take a sense of pride in not paying their football coaches, top 10 salaries. But at the same time, that money affects the programs in other ways, right? I mean, it affects the kind of coordinators you can hire, the kind of assistants you can hire, your recruiting budget, your training facilities, your nutrition. And look, they're certainly good coaches in the Pac-12 have been hired away by other schools. And then those coaches turn around and come out here and recruit the best players, right? I mean, Alabama, they're starting quarterback in the national championship games from Hawaii.
Yep.
They're all American left tackles from Sacramento. their stud tailback is from the Bay Area. So they're coming out here and poaching a lot of the great players. They're doing it with coaches that have recruiting ties to the Pac-12 and are getting paid more money to be elsewhere.
Yeah, and then you have the commissioner making $4.8 million. Okay, so the Pac-12 is going to be dead last in revenue. The commissioner makes $4.8 million. Greg Sankey, who is the commissioner of the SEC, only makes 1.9. Jim Delaney of the Big Ten, who just got everybody $50 million, is only making 2.4. Like, how does that make sense?
It makes sense because the presidents and chancellors of the Pac-12 think it's okay. I mean, really, that is the answer. Larry Scott was hired away in 2009, he was the head of the Women's Tennis Association, and he was making a pretty penny at the WTA. And so when they hired him, they had to give him a compensation package that would attract him.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know exactly what he was making there, but I know that a good portion of what he's making at the Pac-12 was based on what it took to get him. The reason they wanted him was he had experience with television deals. He came in, he got this $3 billion deal with ESPN and Fox that was hailed as revolutionary.
Yeah.
And in some regards, he's still riding those coattails with the presidents and chancellors that are still in place from that were around in 2009. They were thrilled with that. They're still thrilled with it. They don't mind the fact he's making all that money. They think that he's earned it.
How about the deal with with ESPN? The fact that you have this Pac-12 after dark, I know you are the only people playing at that time besides Hawaii. But you have so many people who are AP voters like yourself who are asleep at the time. I mean, I know that you're up watching it because you covered the Pac-12, but you have so many people that don't get a chance to see great Pac-12 teams because it's either late at night or it's on Pac-12 Network, and you cannot see Pac-12 Network anywhere.
Pac-12 Network, to me, is a bigger issue for the conference than just the night games that are on ESPN and Fox. But again, it was a money play. The presidents and chancellors told Larry Scott, you get us the best deal you can from Fox and ESPN. And that deal meant night games because that's the time of day when ESPN and Fox needed games. Yeah. They're okay. They're okay because of the East Coast and Central time zones. They're fine up until 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern. They needed to put content on their airwaves starting at 10 o'clock Eastern. And so they were willing to pay for it. The problem is more the Pac-12 networks that nobody can. It's a regional sports network, and it's hard to get. And lack of exposure, there's no question it's hurting the conference. I think it has hurt the conference with the Heisman Trophy. I think it definitely hurt the conference with Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the guy
he should have won.
He broke Barry Sanders' record, and he finished second. And half of the he has more all-purpose yards than anybody ever. Half those yards were generated in games that started at 10 o'clock on the East Coast or later.
Yep. And so how much pressure? Well, actually, he's not under any pressure. Larry Scott is not because he keeps touting, oh, well, we own the entire network. Nobody else owns the rights. But as a business person, myself, I know that it's better to own a portion of a lot than 100% of this much.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's what they're banking on is that what they're not getting now they will reap the rewards of that in 5 years when they sign their new TV deals.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen if you don't win national championships. So then you have to do something to win national championships the way people want to see you.
I agree with you. I think that I totally agree with you. I think that if the brand is not viewed as a premium brand for football, they're not going to get premium dollars. There's no doubt. And they've got to win games. And the structure of the Pac-12 networks is interfering with their ability to succeed because of exposure, because of finances. There's no doubt about that.
Who do you in terms of if you had one fix for the Pac-12, what would that be?
One fix, boy.
Well, sorry, the first thing that you would do if you were commissioner of the Pac-12.
Well, the first thing I would do within what I can do, I mean, if I could do anything, it would be to disband the Pac-12 networks as they're currently structured, get rid of those 6 regional feeds, and just put everything into one feed. But the problem is they have contracts with Comcast and Fox, and they can't break up what they have. They can't start their own streaming service because of those contracts. So they're very limited legally in what they can do. So if you throw that aside because it's not feasible right now, I mean, the thing I would do, the first thing I do is remodel the scheduling, quite frankly. Right now, they outsource the schedule. They send it to a company in Colorado. That company mocks up the schedule, sends it back to the conference. Then all the schools basically approve it. If I were them, I would handcraft the schedule in-house, and I would make sure that I'm not setting my teams up to fail.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, just like the Pac-12 conference game is on Friday instead of Saturday when your teams just played a late night game on Saturday.
Well, yeah, that's happened now a couple years in a row that one of the teams in the title game is at a little bit of a disadvantage. I mean, last year USC had a bye the week before the title game.
Yeah.
And so Stanford's coming in the title game. It's a short week for them, and SC had a bye. So this year it's not quite that bad. But again, the game being on a Friday is a result of TV saying, we'll pay you for the option to put it on Friday, and the Pac-12 saying, okay, we need the money.
All right. I want to transition over to the college football playoff. And you are and the AP poll, because you are an AP voter. And I'm always confused at times at how the rankings come out, because it's funny because now with the college football playoff, they kind of the AP poll votes the way it votes. And then after the college football playoff comes out, it seems that the poll kind of mirrors what the CFB has.
I think so. I think that there's a little bit of a merging. I think to some extent the playoff poll maybe mirrors the AP poll a little bit, and then the AP poll becomes closer aligned, and they keep kind of every week almost they become closer and closer aligned.
Yeah,
it's hard not to be affected as a voter, to be affected. Look, I put some stock in what they're doing because they got coaches on that committee. They've got access to analytics that are informative. They watch a ton of games. I certainly want to know what they think about teams.
Yeah.
Does it influence me and how I vote starting in November once that poll comes out? Maybe it does subconsciously a little bit. Sure, I don't dismiss that as a possibility.
Go
ahead.
No, I was gonna ask, who do you have as if you were selecting the top 6 teams for the college football playoff rankings? Where do you have the top 6 right now?
I think that I am almost exactly like they are. I think my AP poll is almost exactly what theirs was. I mean, I've had Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame 1, 2, 3 now for at least a month.
Me too.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I had Michigan 4th, moved them out, moved Ohio State. I think I've got Oklahoma. Oh, I've got Georgia in there. Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, maybe LSU's up there. My top. It's been a different year, to be honest with you, because you got 3 undefeated teams, which is more than we usually have at this point.
Yep.
There hasn't been a whole lot of movement.
No, there hasn't been chaos like there normally is.
Nope. There has not been a November Saturday where everything just goes to hell and you have to almost start over. I don't know why it's going to chalk like that.
What do you think? I think it's largely in part to do with the scheduling. That these non-conference games are just so soft by all the conferences, and it's so frustrating. as a fan, because there are so many teams that you could have great matchups on a weekly basis. So what do you specifically think about a team like off the 3-1 loss teams, Georgia, Oklahoma State, and Ohio? I'm sorry, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Ohio State.
Well, I mean, Georgia's been the most consistent for sure. I mean, Oklahoma and Ohio State are kind of mirror images of each other in that the offenses are phenomenal and the defenses are terrible. Then all of a sudden, Ohio State comes up with that performance against Michigan, and you say to yourself, were they just bored all season? What was going on?
Yeah.
You know, Oklahoma, very reflective of the Big 12, right, where there's not a whole lot of defense being played.
But they scored two defensive touchdowns in the game.
Yeah, I know. And they could lose. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose to Texas, to be honest with you. They already did once.
No, I need them to win the way they can go beat Alabama, because they're putting 40 on Alabama. I'm telling you.
You think? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. A part of the issue too is that Alabama and Clemson have been so dominant, right?
Yep.
I mean, and that also gets back to your point about the schedule. When Alabama has got to play the Iron Bowl in Auburn, there's a much better chance of a loss. And they lost last year at Auburn. But
Yep.
when that Iron Bowl is in Tuscaloosa, then there's much less chance of Bama losing.
Yep.
The fact that you add Notre Dame and the way they were able to finish up, you know, it's just been a very top-heavy. Even the one-loss teams, it's just been very top-heavy. And
Yep.
the committee, to be honest with you, the committee hasn't had a whole lot to do. They're going to have something to do potentially if they've got to pick between Ohio. If Alabama wins and they got to pick between Oklahoma and Ohio State, at least there'll be a little bit of drama there.
Yeah.
But if Alabama loses, you know, then I don't know if there is any drama, because then Alabama's going to get in and Ohio State and Oklahoma are both going to get shut out.
Oh, and that's going to break the damn internet. That may be the final thing to get what I've been calling for, which is an 18 playoff. I want the 5 conference champions, the highest ranked non-Power 5 team, and then 2 at-large bids. It's just simple.
It is simple. I mean, that would solve a lot of the problems. The one issue it would raise, though, is where do you play the quarterfinals and when do you play them? Because right now, the way they have the semifinals and championship game structured, the quarterfinals would have to be played before Christmas.
Correct.
So are you playing them in the middle of December during final exams? Are you playing them on campuses? Are you playing them on neutral sites? Or do you eliminate the conference championship games and basically turn those into quarterfinals? They would really have to think hard about the semantics of how it would work, but it would certainly solve some of the problems. We're going to get to an 18 playoff, but whether it happens in 2 or 3 years or 7 or 8 years, I would probably guess it's going to be the latter.
I actually think it's going to be sooner.
Do you?
Only because you're going to have the Pac-12, the Big 10, and the Big 12 so angry about the playoff and how it's playing out that they're and people being left out. I think it's going to be frustrating. And then you're going to have some of the non-Power 5 teams that have some sort of input in this too, that I think that are going to want to change so much. You guys, we are here with Jon Wilner. He is an AP writer, Heisman Trophy voter, beat writer of the year in 2013 by the Football Writers Association with the San Jose Mercury News, covers the Pac-12, and this man is a veteran, knows everything about everything. Who do you have as your Heisman Trophy winner right now?
Well, I haven't actually put, to be honest, I have not put my ballot together. I got to do that this weekend. And the votes are due Monday. I think it's 5 o'clock Eastern. And most voters do wait for the championship games to be played, fortunately. I will probably end up voting, unless something changes, for Tua.
No, hold on. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you finish, and then I will make...
You go ahead. Fire away.
Okay. I'm going to make my case for Kyler Murray.
Go ahead. It's a good case.
Okay. Kyler Murray he's better statistically in every major category.
Yep.
Than Tua Tagovailoa. He's asked to do more for his team than Tua is. And the amount of pressure on Kyler Murray, because for Kyler Murray, every throw pretty much matters. Every drop back. And because his team can lose. it is so much easier for Tua to play without fear and trepidation of losing a game. Like you see him make throws that coaches would yell and be like, no, don't throw that, because he has no fear of losing. There is no pressure on him at quarterback. He can go out there and play free, and Kyler Murray has to account for so much offense, and he knows that he's got so much pressure. Every throw and every drop back, every decision matters. So there is my case for Kyler Murray.
It's a good case. I agree with you can't refute any of that. I do think the defenses in the Big 12 are second rate. What to me, what is the most compelling argument for Tua is that he has transformed the way the most successful program in the country plays and turned them into a different type of team. They don't have to rely on winning, winning a game 30-14.
Yep.
They now have an offense that is as good as Oklahoma's offense. He has transformed Nick Saban's program, and it is very much of an intangible case to be made for him. In addition to the fact he doesn't ever play in the fourth quarter because they're so far ahead, but they're also so far ahead because he's so good. I just think that the impact he's had on that program and the dominance that program has had this season, and it is what has made me lean towards voting for him. But I do want to see what happens this weekend. There's no question about that. And it's a great game. I mean, Murray's been fantastic. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I would just want to see a dude who, like, I always like people who have to do more than, while I appreciate, and you're right about Alabama, about Tua changing the way Alabama plays. And then you mentioned that the Big 12 has second-rate defense, which I would agree with. But I would also say that the SEC has second-rate offense. Like that their defenses are good, but like you can only find about 3 or 4 competent offenses in the entire SEC conference. Like you got Alabama, you got Georgia, you got Missouri sometimes, and I mean that's kind of about it.
That's true. The SEC, it is interesting how they just cannot, across the board, they have year after year, they can't put together elite offenses. But some of that is just the way they play, right? A lot of those programs, they take a kid who could be a stud receiver and they put him at DB. Whereas in the Big 12, that guy's playing receiver, right? So some of it is just the mentality of the programs and the culture of the football in the conference. They're not. No, that's true. You could say the SEC's offenses are lagging the way Big 12 defenses are lagging. That's true.
Yeah, I got 2 final questions for you, Jon, before we get out of here. Number 1, who will be the next Pac-12 team to win the national championship? That's the first one.
Good question. I would have to probably pick the last Pac-12 team to win the national championship. The USC, to a greater extent than Washington or Oregon or anyone else, has got the resources, the recruiting base, the tradition to attract the players that you've got to have if you're going to beat Clemson and Alabama, quite frankly. I mean, they haven't had that lately, but if you look at who could field a starting 22 that can compete with Bama and Clemson on a neutral field, SC is the best bet to be able to compile that kind of a roster. I mean, SC's got overwhelming number of the national championships for the Pac-12. They got more than everybody else combined. So I would probably stick with the Trojans, but it could be a long time, right? It's been now 2004 season, so it's been 14 years. Yep. Better than basketball, right? The Pac-12's last national championship in basketball was 1997.
20 years ago.
But that's the thing, is it's not just who could field a good team or win a conference title. It's who can slug it out with Ohio State and Alabama and Clemson on a neutral field. And you got to have the players to do that. Who can
Yeah.
get those players? Well,
Yeah.
SC's got a better chance of getting those players than anybody else.
See, I have two teams that I think are most likely. Number one, if Oregon's coaching can match up with the way it's recruiting right now, because if they can continuously put up top 5 or top 10 classes, I think they'll have a chance because they'll have the horses. But I think in 2 years you will have Chip Kelly competing for a national, in the college football conversation, like in the top 10, top 12 at UCLA.
I think that, yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. And you know what? The conference desperately needs UCLA to maximize what it can be, because if you factor in the LA media market, UCLA's brand recognition across the country, that is really the fact that they're not competitive nationally has hurt the Pac-12. They haven't won a conference title in 20 years. And you have to almost mismanage the program for that to be the case. So I agree with you that Kelly can do that. And I think that the conference, I actually wrote a column about that a few months ago. The conference desperately needs UCLA to be top 10 in the next few years.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. And my last question for you, sir, is about the college football playoff. So we know that the Pac-12, that it hurts itself with the schedule and all of that. And you told us that you think that USC or potentially even UCLA has a chance to win soonest. And my last question for you is this: who wins the college football playoff?
Boy, you know what? I would not be surprised if I had to bet a nickel. I'd probably bet on Alabama, but I think Clemson can play with Bama. I think they got the defense and they've got the enough playmakers on offense. The difference between those two, I mean, I could see the semifinals being blowouts, to be honest, and then that national championship game going down to the wire. I would probably pick Bama. But Clemson would not surprise me if they somehow pull it out. They would need a phenomenal game from Trevor Lawrence, their freshman quarterback. Kind of like what they had a couple years ago with Deshaun Watson, who was just awesome in the fourth quarter. But that's the only team to me that can really hold up with Bama for 4 quarters.
Here is my prediction: Alabama versus Oklahoma in the first round. Oklahoma wins.
Oh wow!
In a shocker. And then Clemson drowns Notre Dame, and then Clemson walks over Oklahoma. That's what I think is going to end up happening.
Oh wow, that's an interesting. Yeah, I definitely look at those teams and think I'm not sure Notre Dame's the one that can really compete as good as they are. But that would be pretty interesting if Oklahoma beat Alabama. That would be one of the biggest upsets in college football history in terms of postseason games.
Yep, it is they are the Patriots who were 18-0, and I'm telling you, it is gonna fall apart. You guys, we've been joined by Jon Wilner. He's been covering college sports for decades. AP top 25 voter. He told us why he votes how he votes, and the Heisman Trophy. Hopefully, I did enough to convince him to vote for Kyler Murray today. Beat Writer of the Year. You can find him on Twitter at Wilner Hotline, and he also does a podcast as well. And he does emergency podcasts as well when the Pac-12 needs it.
Right. Which is often.
Right. So hopefully over the next couple years that we get the solution to the playoff. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else to add before we get out of here today?
I'm good. This has been fantastic. Ton of fun. You had some great questions. Really made me think about some stuff I hadn't thought about. So I appreciate that.
Oh man, you are a wise man, sir. And and he told me also that he was working for the LA Times when I was coming out way yesteryear. So I appreciate that. Hope you wrote some great things about me as well. All right, guys. Remember, visit unafraidshow.com. Check out Jon Wilner's stuff at Wilner at Wilner Hotline, WILNER Hotline. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for your time. Make sure you share the feed. Thank you. Peace out. Catch you guys tomorrow.